Good morning, my name is Nomi Hussain, and I, along with Floyd Weissner and Omar Khwaja, represent the family of Sungul Buskirk. We have today with us her brother, Ikram, and one of her sisters, Khadija. Sungul was a 29-year-old young lady who was in the prime of her life. She lived here in Izmir with her parents, and she was traveling to Istanbul on February 5th, 2020 to visit her fiancé who had flown in from Dubai. She was planning her marriage, which was going to be later this summer, and she had many, many plans like most of us in the future. On February 5th, 2020, like 177 other passengers, she boarded Pegasus Air Flight 2193, which was flying to Istanbul. The flight landed at Istanbul Airport at 6:19 p.m. and suffered a runway excursion. The United States Federal Aviation Authority defines a runway excursion when a plane either veers off or overruns the paved surface of the runway. And that is exactly what happened with Pegasus Flight 2193. Pegasus Flight 2193 was a flight that was a 737 Series 800, which was delivered to Air Berlin 11 years ago in 2009. There's been approximately 5,000 737-800s that have been delivered around the world to various airlines. This plane was actually owned by an Irish-Japanese leasing company by the name of SBMC. We know from our prior cases and investigations into other runway excursions that this is not the first time a Boeing 737 Series 800 has veered off or overrun a runway. Specifically, in May of 2019, Miami Air International, while landing in Jacksonville, suffered a runway excursion, and the cause of that crash, among other things, was a problem with the reverse thruster on the plane. In addition, prior to this crash, Pegasus Airlines had a flight number 8622, which also suffered a runway excursion on January 13, 2018. After the pilots were interviewed, the pilots said that one of the engines suffered an asymmetrical thrust, which basically means that the power to one engine increased while the power to the other engine was either running at normal, idle, or decreasing, which caused that plane to also run off the runway. In addition, Garuda Air Flight 258 on February 1st, 2017, while landing also had an issue with its reverse thruster. So this is not the first time a Boeing 737 has had a runway excursion. In fact, the Boeing 737 Series 800 has had numerous runway excursions caused by either the reverse thruster or the braking system. We know that this cause of this crash was either the braking system or the reverse thrusters, and we will be able to prove that based on the information we have from other crashes of similar nature. The family has retained us to investigate this accident and investigate the responsibility of all parties. The knee-jerk reaction after any aviation crash is to automatically blame the pilots. But the pilots are not always at fault. I can tell you that from our experience working on both the Ethiopian 302 crash and the Lion Air 610 crash, immediately after the crash, the press and the public blamed the pilots. But through the investigation and the litigation of the Boeing 737 MAX crash, we have been able to show that it was not the pilot's fault. It was actually a serious fault in the software and the hardware of the plane that caused the crash. So before jumping to conclusions, it's always important to fully investigate the cause of the crash before you start assigning blame. And that is one of the reasons the family of Sungul has retained us. And we have filed a lawsuit in Cook County, Illinois, where Boeing Corporation is based. We believe that through the litigation process, we will be able to reveal and discover documents that will show that Boeing knew of issues regarding the 737 Series 800 plane, specifically relating to the reverse thruster and the braking system. Finally, in conclusion, what I would like to say is that if you are a victim or your family member was injured in this plane crash, we can speak from personal experience that you may be approached by representatives of different insurance companies, and they may ask you to sign a release in exchange for monetary gain or money. And our advice to you is to find an attorney and have that attorney review the document before you sign anything. I can tell you that we are representing a family in Indonesia that was approached right after the Lion Air crash, and the airline told them that we will pay you this amount of money if you sign and release us from any responsibility. So the family signed. But in that document, not only was the airline released, but Boeing was released, the component manufacturers were released, all of the contractors were released, and the insurers were released. And the family was unaware of that because they did not have the document reviewed by an attorney. During our stay here in Turkey, me and Mr. Omar Khwaja have met with very good attorneys who are very knowledgeable. And we encourage you, again, before signing any document regarding this crash, please consult with an attorney to understand your legal rights. We have a copy of the complaint that has been filed in Chicago. If you would like a copy of it, please get in touch with Mr. Yusuf Atakson here in Izmir. I'd like to make 3 points to address your question. First, planes land in bad weather every single day. Landing in bad weather should not be a cause of a plane to crash. This is something that's foreseeable by Boeing and something that is planned for by Boeing when they're designing and building their planes. Second of all, in the history of aviation, whenever a plane crashes, the reaction is always the same. It was the pilot's fault. It was the pilot's fault. Because usually the pilots are not there to defend themselves. This case is different, and many runway excursion cases are different because fortunately the pilots most likely survive, as do most of the passengers. So in this case, we'll be able to talk to the pilots. Now, the third point I'd like to make is that based on our prior experience dealing with 737-800s that have a runway excursion, our evidence has always shown us that the reverse thrusters and the braking system always contributed to the fact that the plane veered off the runway or left the runway. And the other point that I would like to make is based on our prior experience litigating with Boeing, such as we're currently in litigation with Boeing involving the 737 MAX litigation. There are numerous documents, information, emails, text messages that Boeing does not make publicly available. That's not available to the public, it's not available to the governments, it's not available to its customers, the airlines around the world. However, some documents in the MAX litigation have been released through the press, and many documents have been released through the litigation. I want to talk about the documents that have been released through the press. As most of you know, the both crashes, the Lion Air 610 and the Ethiopian 302, were caused by the failure of the MCAS system on the 737 MAX. And as a result of that, the 737 MAX has been grounded for almost 1 year. We have learned through the press and through our investigation, through text messages, that Boeing employees were texting each other saying that they would never fly on the 737 MAX. Boeing employees were saying that there is an unsafe culture at the Boeing company. Boeing employees were saying that the plane was designed by monkeys and supervised by clowns. Boeing employees put in an email that Boeing awarded its contracts to the lowest bidder and wanted to follow unreasonably aggressive timelines on delivering its planes. So we believe that through the litigation, we will be able to discover additional information that will confirm our theory and what our experts are saying, that the braking system or the reverse thrusting system on this plane contributed to the runway excursion on February 5th, 2020.